I'm just another reader, and today I'm reviewing The Player That Can't Level Up. If that sounds familiar to you, if you've read Solo Leveling, you know its name directly translates to Only I Level Up. It sounds very similar, and that's because these stories are very similar. It is a bit of a parody, bit of a carbon copy, whatever you want to call it, but I will try not to let that influence my review too much, but it's impossible to ignore the amount of similarities. And you'll see that once I start getting into it, but let's just skip the comparisons for now and talk about the novel. Let's start with chapter 1. So, the tower suddenly appeared. Interesting art direction. It looks decent. It's not too good, not too bad, but I like what we're starting off just right off the bat. Chapter 1 looks good. Along with the tower came the gates, and we all know what comes with gates? Monsters. They just come pouring out. Okay, we got gates, a tower, and monsters. What next? I think we know what's coming next. The players or hunters, but people who can fight the monsters and loot what is inside those dungeons. Now we got a player economy. Players, hunters, whatever you want to call them, are rich in this world. They are celebrities, subjects of envies, even heroes. So that's kind of the setup. Basically, it's saying the same world as Solo Leveling, and our main character is on his way home from work, and he's looking at the billboard. He's like, South Korea's latest hero, an 18-year-old unique ability retainer. So unique abilities is, a unique ability to that guy, and it kind of makes them special. How special? Well, they are described as superhumans amongst superhumans. I also include this panel because I think the art looks pretty good in this specific panel. I mean, you got the human character that's causing all this is a little small, but the actual monsters themselves that are experiencing the ability are at the forefront. I really like this image. It's pretty good. And for more background and unique abilities, players who are truly monsters, like he is one of the stronger new players. And we saw 18 years old. 18 is kind of when you become a player or have the potential to become a player in this world, which is important to keep that in mind. So our main character, it is his birthday today. He just turned 18 and he is checking the mailbox to see if he got an invite from the Player Association, the people that judge if you're worthy to become a player. So he's going through the mail. He's like, bills, loans. It's like he's a little poor, but it is what it is. He gets inside the house and his sister's like, surprise, happy birthday. And he's like, where'd you get the money to buy a cake? You didn't buy it with the money I gave you to get new clothes, did you? And it's like very emphasizing the fact that they're poor, dirt poor even. Like his little sister bought him a cake for his 18th birthday. I mean, they're not in the best situation financially. And his sister surprises him because she went through the mail first with his player invitation. She made it a little special. That's nice. They're a happy little family. And like, this is such a big thing for him. He's like, they said I'm a player. He is ecstatic, tears in the eyes, like he's screaming. This is a life-changing event because, as we saw earlier, with being a player comes fame, money. I mean, it could completely change his lifestyle. He looks into his mother's room after celebrating because he's like, and I can finally afford to help you because the mother is bedridden. Kind of like Solo Leveling, but let's ignore that. She's bedridden with like a mysterious illness, yada yada. We kind of know where they're going with that. So we go to the Player Association and he's like, oh, I'm level 1 and why do I have question marks after unique ability? What's that mean? And the woman's just like, congratulations, you're the retainer of unique ability. And as we saw, just having a unique ability at the age of 18 got a guy on the billboard. So this is even better. There's superhumans among superhumans. He's one of the very best just from that. And the woman is celebrating, like, congrats. And it's like, he's so excited he can't stop shaking. And we see someone who's overhearing the conversation, the unique ability retainer from the billboard. And he's like, if it's not too much to ask, would it be all right if I be his guide? Now, what is a guide? Guides are people that show a new player through the tutorial area. Levels 1 through 5, very important information for later in this novel. And I just kind of make sure they don't die because, hey, scary monsters, first time fighting them. very interesting concept. It's more game-like in that sense, where like maybe a veteran player might help newer players. This novel does take a lot of influence from games, just for calling them players. So did solo leveling, but this one kind of wears that belt a bit more obvious, I'd say. So we cut to 5 years later, and you know, we're in a forest. We hear clang clang, and it's him fighting a goblin. But he is distraught because supposedly given a unique ability, a privilege of the chosen. But 5 years have passed since then, and not only does it take me an hour to hunt a single goblin, he can't level up. And that's chapter 1. That's what this whole story is. So I'm going to begin the serious comparisons to solo leveling now, just because it's impossible to ignore. The way the world's set up is exactly like solo leveling. The only difference really is the tower, like a main thing to climb. But we also have the tower in solo leveling, kind of with like the Demon King and how he climbed that tower. And it's a cheap copy. It's hard to ignore that. The mother has the same illness. The father's missing for some reason. We're not given that explanation. He has a little sister. Even the family dynamic is exactly the same. Like, he gave the mother illness right off the bat this time. It's just, why do so much like solo leveling when you could just do your own thing a little bit? Because world building is interesting. I mean, a lot of people will read a book just to see how the world will develop. And he even has dungeon breaks if you don't clear the dungeon in time. If you've read solo leveling, you know how this entire world works. There's guilds. No big surprises in the world building department. In the character department, it's kind of like solo leveling in the fact that very few other characters are on screen. It's mostly just our main character. But the special ability he does get that makes him strong is called the ability to get egos from weapons he binds with. But only certain weapons can give him egos. And these egos have their own personalities. So in a way, there's more talking from our main character to other characters through that, which is nice. And he also, this is how he gets strong. In solo leveling, he had the necromancer thing. And this one, he is forced in a perilous situation, kind of like solo leveling. And he gets that ability. And whenever his ego levels up, because they can level up because they're people, basically, egos, he gets their stats shared with them as long as he's touching the weapon or close enough to him. So, is his main way to get stronger? He's like 3 or 4 people leveling at the same time, pretty much in one person. That sounds great. I sigh because it's not. I don't know if the author realized he's writing a power fantasy, but he's severely lacking in the power fantasy department. Against monsters, he does fine, but whenever he goes off by his lonesome for the first time, he kind of just loses to other people. In solo leveling, we never got that image of our main character losing. I'm not going to try pronouncing the names. I'm sorry, I just can't. But we never got that image of our main character losing until very late into the novel, but he comes back quite quickly. I don't want to give spoilers. But in this one, he doesn't really hold a candle to any of the major players in this world. And they kind of string him along, as in he becomes a underling for one of them, basically. And it's just like, at that point, the power fantasy's gone, because the whole thing about solo leveling that felt good was like, he's off by himself, no one can control him, no guild, no government organization, he is his own boss. In this one, we lose that feeling very early, and it feels bad for a power fantasy novel. So in that department, it is failing to imitate the very things that made solo leveling great. The unique powers are cool to a degree. It's cool because, hey, it's a little different than solo leveling. But then later on, he gets powers that make him just almost a copy of solo leveling, being able to have necromancer-like abilities to summon minions. He's also a dual wielder, but instead of daggers, it's swords. So it's just very similar. Its main weapons, the main things that give him levels, is his 2 blades, a demonic sword, and a holy sword. We don't really go into the holy sword that much, but we do go into the demonic sword and how that may influence his personality since it's evil. But all in all, it just feels worse than solo leveling, so much that it's hard to bear. Now, I did read all the available chapters. There's currently 75 at the time of me reading this, and it just kind of lost me. Some plot threads just felt like they wanted to set up something bigger, and I was looking forward to that, and they just didn't, which was upsetting because solo leveling, from a story standpoint, didn't really do anything crazy for the majority of its run. It just was him getting stronger and surprising people with his strength. This one felt like it was trying to do something else, but time and time again, it just failed. So, final verdict on the player that can't level up: it's not worth your time. If you've read solo leveling, you've basically read the best version of this novel. This seems like something that was in someone's drafts and they kind of put out just to see if it would catch some appeal. I think it's best you avoid this. There's probably better solo leveling copies out there. Not probably, I know there are because I've read them. This is a poor man's solo leveling. Best to avoid this one.